Hey guys, so today you and I are going to talk about commitment. So let's get into it. So the question in question was, Frederick, as a software engineer, tech lead, how do you identify committed software engineers in your team? Well, I usually find that the people who do the best, who are really committed, are the people who show a few factors. And this is something that I, I, the thing is, some of the software developers that I work with are people who are more, as I like to call them, engine types of software developer. Software developers, and some of more like visionary, more like overt, extroverted type of people. And the thing is that when I look at commitment from a software developer, it's actually a lot of people assume that, of course, the overted person is the one whose commitment is going to be the most shown, or the one that you actually see. And this is one of those beautiful things that I love about being at the level of where, like, I'm I have a responsibility as like a leadership type of administrative type of position, but I haven't been decoupled to the point where I don't understand the difference between a good software developer and a bad one, which is what happens when you get to be an engineering manager usually, or you get higher up, because the only thing that matters to for example, higher management is things that can be seen at their level, and that is the one of the criticisms that I give modern IT companies, where you really only reward a certain type of commitment to your company, which is pretty damn bad usually. But it's not because the others who work in the shadows, if that makes sense. It's not because they are not making progress or committing to the company. It is because you can't see that that's what they're doing. So the way that I identify a committed software developer is in when given the opportunity to go the extra mile or to do the right thing, will they? And when given the opportunity, will they provide useful feedback or take initiative on something that helps the overall goal of the company or the team? You see, I have a few methods that I use. An example would be when I do code reviews. I look at the code reviews and I see what type of code is being written. I see if the software developer is adding tests without me telling the software developer. I see if I ask the software developer to add tests, or ask them why didn't you add tests, if they get defensive about it, and so forth and so forth. You get all of these cues on people's behavior when you interact with them in an arena or in a context where we're all, so it's sort of like football or whatever. When you're playing with people and you ask them how they're thinking and what the positioning that they're using, etc., etc., you learn things about their thought process and how they do their job, and you can also direct them in a better way. So as an example, I've claimed in a few videos that a software manager who has no prior experience of software development has fuck all in terms of chances to fix a problem in a software team. There is nothing you can do because you don't understand the work, which means that your only card to play is that the problem can be solved by creating a nicer social environment, and then you have quote-unquote the talented software developers that are necessary in the teams to fix the rest for you, which is the bet of practically every software company until they realize that you can't hire top talent with a top-down system. It's not going to work. You have to hire bottom up. You have to have really talented engineers and make them into managers. That is what's going to work. And this is one of the reasons, because now when I see that my introverted software developer who usually doesn't like do a lot of, they might not ask a lot of questions or like be very forward in the meetings or things like that. Well, I noticed that that person, Nion, has made sure that the overall quality of the software has gone up. He has taken the time to make sure that there is documentation. He's taken the time to make sure that everybody gets timely code reviews. In other words, he's actually sticking up for his, or like contributing to reviewing his coworkers' code faster than they usually are, because when he has a code review, he does it almost immediately for the other people, whereas they might wait a whole week before they give it back, etc., etc. So there are many of these queues that you can find, and then I have another one where I usually provide the teams with one day of like where they sort of get to do whatever they want, or like one person within the team is allowed to like experiment with something or do something, an improvement day, if you will. And I notice what type of stores they pick up, or if they don't pick any, no one ever uses that day, or if there's no one who's ever coming with any input or so forth. Like, what is the nature of the improvements that they are looking to add to the project? And that gives me an indicator. And then, of course, I would like to think that I'm not so, as naive as to think that just because someone's, for example, always showing up to the meetings or always in doing things like that, such as with what the managers are usually impressed with, that is just because they're really committed to the company. I've met many software developers who have all these nice little tricks that is trying to hide the fact that they're incompetent, or like that they're very weak in their coding, and they do that by trying to avoid doing coding. It's a classic thing I see all the time, and I've actually called a few people out on it, where, I mean, I don't even have to be angry with them. I see them always, whenever they are given the chance, to picking up the lightest possible work, jumping into any meeting that they can be in, because, then they never say anything in the meetings either. They have nothing to contribute in the meeting. They're just there to sort of fuck off. And things like that I notice as well, which is a different type of, it's not positive, but I do notice it. And these sorts of cues, they're very easy to pick up on when you understand the work and you understand how people behave, when the difference is between a person who's usually very uncommitted or fairly lazy, how they will behave in a place of work. And trust me guys, this is not just software development. Every single person who runs their own business will be able to tell you that they sometimes have employees who find, and they know the tricks, they know how, the stock, how the clerks go out and do quote unquote inventory to smoke, and they like do inventory several times a day, etc., etc., or how people skip on things that they don't have to do because nobody's watching, because they're lazy and they don't actually care enough to make sure that this is being done in a correct fashion, and so forth and so forth. That's not the end of the world, but let's not pretend, which is like popular culture, that the manager is always the bad guy in every situation. That's not true. It's never going to be true. There is always a grain of truth to that. There are lazy workers just as there are bad managers. So what I want you to take away from this is that the way that I identify commitment to a software team is that I look at the times when given the choice. That is the thing that I always care about. It's sort of I think it's, what was it, Jordan Peterson who said at some point that good people, or good guys, they are usually very dangerous people. They are the sort of people who can do really bad stuff, but they choose to do good stuff instead. And I completely agree with that sentiment. It's the same thing where there's Chris Rock makes a comment about, a man is only as faithful to his wife as his options, and I also agree with that usually, because it's always the case where everything is a trade-off between something else. And the same thing is true for software developers. So usually when I look at commitment, I look at when you are given the opportunity. Are you going to roll up your sleeves and do the thing that is probably best for the company or the team or so forth? Are you going to choose to not be lazy and actually do a good job when you could have tried to be lazy? Are you going to go out and hunt for answers to your questions, or are you just going to sit on your ass and just tell everybody that, no, I couldn't figure it out, do it for me? Are you a lazy bum when given the choice, or are you a person who's actually going to make some stuff happen? That is how I identify commitment. Have a great day.